were talking about the user experience in a B2B setup.
Traditionally, what we see as a trend when companies are essentially transitioning, or migrating to BigCommerce, whether it's from legacy tech or just entering a new digital online sales channel and spinning one up, are essentially like three main issues that arise or challenges. And they're operational inefficiencies, website performance issues, or poor customer experience. And so strategic investments for future growth are typically being decided based on those three challenges. So combating like operational efficiencies typically look like legacy systems that maybe drain efficiency for the business. And typically we see that contributing to about 30% operational loss. And when
what would that be, like customer service and things like that, or efficiencies moving data between like a fulfillment system and the order system?
Yeah, absolutely. Could be inefficiencies in technology stacks that are maybe pre-cloud or pre-mobile era. So monolithic could be, that you've outgrown maybe the confines of that monolithic e-commerce platform that you're on. ERPs could be migrating actually, and that's typically a trend right now that's really popular in the sense that there's some sort of continuous development, and there's a real shift in ERPs happening at the moment across the board, where it's no longer like 3 to 5 years where you're getting like pushes of new releases, major releases on that kind of 3 to 5 year mark. You're actually seeing it where ERPs just decided, hey, you've got to migrate to this new release, and we're going to continuously push out these releases. So that's a big shift that's happening. And then that means that there's big opportunities essentially in the e-commerce platforms and the integrations between ERP, CRM, PIM, and ERP. So that's where these those legacy tech blockers are, and that's really what's standing in the way of companies' growth. They're ROI killers. Most of the companies have identified that they need to make an investment, and go digital. We see that globally that there's 41% of all enterprises, or businesses today in the global market who operate their businesses on legacy tech platforms. And in the United States, they're above average, actually. About 48% of all of those businesses are running on legacy tech right now. And that's a big burden if you look at it from the B2B buyer side. B2B customers just don't want that any longer. They're going online more to establish like who their next supplier would be, to buy online, to reorder online, and then to do their research around maybe speccing a new supplier. So
I think we dug out a stat, or Chris dug out a stat that said 73% of B2B buyers want a more personalized experience, a bit more like you would get as a B2C customer. Do you see a trend in people wanting the same kind of experience, whether they're B2B or B2C? And you said a minute ago, enhancing the experience was something that a lot of these companies are investing in over and above other things.
Yeah, so to that note, companies who realize that they have a legacy tech blocker and that they're now looking at a new B2B buyer and they need to transition and adapt to thrive, essentially, look at investments in this way that first they want to create a better customer experience. So there are customer-centric deployments happening in all deployment scenarios typically, and that's the number one driver for the investment, is that customer experience. And to be honest with you,
what do you see a lot of people investing in that experience? Is it search? Is it catalog merchandising? Is it like pricing? Is it what are the big sort of things they're investing in terms of experience? You said a minute ago the product page, didn't you?
Yeah. So exactly. So when you connect this to the B2B buyer, the product detail page becomes the most critical, in the sense that for B2B, this is what's different from B2C. In B2C, there aren't that high stakes. If you purchase the wrong thing, Your wife might be upset with you that you got the wrong toilet paper, but in B2B world, the B2B buyer could lose their job, right? And so the table stakes are much higher. And so what you're doing as a business is you're actually delivering trust. And if the buyer, doesn't trust that they're purchasing the correct item, they're going to drop and not convert. So product detail pages become very critical in this sense. I'm a B2B buyer. I want to know that and confirm that this is the correct product. I do that even on the SKU level, in B2B. So data accuracy is super critical. And then the technology stack that delivers all of that to the product detail page is super critical in the sense that the product information, the tutorials, on how to use this product, the maybe the material safety data sheets, all that enriched content, essentially has to be served not only on your platform, but also in this omni-channel experience as well. And it's super critical to the B2B buying purchase path. So as a B2B buyer, when I land on a product detail page, I'm first going to validate the product information is correct. Then after I've done that, I'm going to validate if this is the correct price that I'm buying at. And then I'm going to check if this is available. When am I going to receive this thing once I make the purchase? If all three of these components, align, then I'm going to purchase as a B2B buyer. But if they don't, then I'm going to bounce. Because the reality is that in today's world, the B2B buyer doesn't actually want to talk to a salesperson per se. And you as a business want to, you're trying to become more profitable as well through this journey.
In the UK, when you buy as a business, you fall out of the consumer protection. So you're not entitled to returns. You're not entitled to refunds in the same way as you are a consumer. And similarly, the volumes that you could be buying at could be a lot higher than you would be buying, like you said, something for your wife. You get it wrong, okay, it's only one item. If you go and order 10,000 pallets of something at the wrong price and then not be able to return it because you fall out of the consumer protection, that is a big problem, isn't it? So the accuracy of the data seems to be another one to add on to that. So we've got availability, affordability, delivery, and the data accuracy. Certainly B2B sounds like a strong part.
For BigCommerce and our open SaaS model, that's where we have really been able to help companies in simplifying that complexity. Doing that with core B2B functionality on our B2B edition, but also then delivering beyond that through kind of our integrated service partners and our technology agency partnerships. Actually, one good example of this on a very large scale is MKM, a UK business actually. MKM Building Supplies, they're the fastest and now the largest builders merchant in all of the UK. They launched their whole new digital online presence with BigCommerce essentially as their e-commerce engine. And then we power their PCI compliant checkout with payments and all. And they've reported essentially, they serve 197,000 customers today. They do $1 billion in revenue essentially at this point. And they had never, their core business had never used the online store until they released their new website. And through that, they saw within the first month, they saw collecting more payments than they ever did in the entire previous year through that functionality. And that actually became the value add. MKM is amazing. They won essentially the Mock Alliance Award. So it's a company to look at essentially as a benchmark. But that behavior of not only transacting online, but then coming back and doing those admin things, were super powerful for the business and, created better operational efficiencies. But for the customer experience, they saw the tool now as a value tool, that they could come back to, reorder product, and also then handle their payments.
Do you see many businesses invest in the My Account pages? A lot of businesses that are moving perhaps into the B2B space or are in it now, they've come from having really personal relationships with businesses and are now moving to more of a faceless way of transacting. And by creating like a hub or a My Account area where they invest in and make it feel like they're still being relationship managed when actually they're being managed by a platform, it kind of is a good transition, because they kind of still feel like they're being dealt with personally rather than sort of being pushed onto the internet.
As you see businesses kind of automate processes, it is really important. Actually, it's becoming more important to also have those human touch points throughout. And the companies that understand that typically you see this actually when the sales complexity of the product, is high, that you have these kind of high touch point. It's actually more of a necessity at this point to have a high touch point journey, throughout the customer experience. And there's going to be these, if you're a company that's really looking at the customer loyalty and the satisfaction, you're looking at these highs and the lows, and addressing those pain points, and doing that through the technology stack, whereas you're not just totally offloading the entire experience to the tech stack and to some sort of self-service, fully automated. It's just, it's definitely, it's not the right way to approach it, essentially. But we definitely empower merchants of all sizes, essentially, to be able to create those customer experiences for today, but also we future-proof them, for what's next. And that's what's quite exciting.
The future-proof side of things, like there's a part where when someone's going into this and speccing out what they need from a B2B platform, that's really where you can get some sort of pain points in the transition, right? Because they've been doing things a certain way for so many years, and now they've got to either adapt to doing it slightly differently because SaaS doesn't support it, or they have to kind of, rethink that part. And where they've been trading for so many years, again, they might have just thought something is, every day, and not kind of brought it up as part of the scope. But then later it turns out to be a feature that they're really heavily reliant on. Is there any kind of things that you've seen that have helped minimize errors or made the transition smoother when they're moving from one platform to another or moving on to, BigCommerce?
Yes, I mean, in those scenarios, and we get these questions a lot, actually, like, where do we just start, right? And it's actually commonplace, so what we tend to do is help merchants through their digital maturity. So we actually do like kind of a digital maturity assessment. In fact, we're working on a tool publicly right now to not only aid in like a sales process perspective, but actually help them in that digital maturity assessment, and then get to a point where it just kicks out essentially their strategy, which is another component of that digital maturity, being able to assess where you might lack in the business, to be able to then identify where to work on, and then taking that step to that digital strategy, and then the execution. And the execution looks like upskilling the workforce, typically, because you don't go to school for e-commerce today. Maybe that changes in the future. Probably for commerce in general, not just e-commerce, but for commerce in general, you probably get that. But upskilling the workforce, and then learning those tools, and that technology to be able to best utilize it, for not only your company, but for the customer journey that you're trying to, solve for.
And if you have to pick out, like, say, 3 crowning features of BigCommerce that you're leading the charge on over other platforms, what would be those 3 kind of big reasons people are choosing BigCommerce over other platforms right now for B2B?
So essentially customers are choosing BigCommerce because of open SaaS, through the open SaaS platform that looks like, solving operational inefficiencies that they might face, the website performance issues, getting onto a modern, technology stack, essentially, to be able to sunset some of their legacy platforms. And in those cases where they are sunsetting the legacy platforms, we see that there's about an average about a 20% savings in their IT cost structure, and that typically funds the e-commerce platform actually moving forward. So it's quite interesting from a cost savings perspective. But then the revenue gains they get out of it are tremendous, and that's the real difference once they do deliver a solution, from migrating. That the customer experience, some of the more intangible things, we see though come in the form of growth for the business that's profitable growth. And on average, they get a payback within 8 months of a project. And again, that's aggregated from $50 million revenue to say the 1 billion. But then we have other customers or clients in there who just need to spin up a B2B shop that's going to serve their $5 million business. And we see those companies growing through being able to not only deploy a store on their own like that, and being successful at scaling beyond 5 million and going to that 10 to 20. And we have very good success on platform with that as well. I
think there's a couple of things that I always get pointed out with BigCommerce. One is the multi-storefront, because B2B, you tend to go after niches. And they might be, they might all have a similar theme or frame, but you might go after a healthcare niche, and then you might go after an education niche, and you can't serve those two businesses on the one storefront because they don't look tailored enough.
Absolutely, multi-storefront plays a big key in that, but it's operational with the B2B functionality. Also key there is, that if you're a B2C company, but you also have B2B and you're just trying to transition, which seems to be more than a trend today. It's becoming standard practice because companies, are looking to grow, and that's opening up a new revenue channel totally for them. And they're doing that digitally and online. And so that's really interesting because we not only have, got that trust from the B2C companies, but we're also gaining that in the B2B space. And now you're able to manage, both B2C and B2B from one backend, and do that with multi-storefront. If you are pushing into region specifics, or you're looking to have local currencies, then you're able to accomplish that, from day one out of the box, right? And that's quite powerful. You could set up multi-storefront with a distributor, wholesaler, and then with the other functionalities we kind of talked about today around like sales quoting and how that's gated. You could really empower the entire organization through like the hybrid model where you're doing that offline today.